KJA Global Channel, The Political System and Me. Series 3, Institutions, Power, Rights, and Accountability. Episode 29, My Federal Democracy Design, Shared Sovereignty in Practice. Federal democracy is one of the most misunderstood ideas in political life. Many people hear it and imagine separation, regions going their own way, a country breaking into pieces, unity becoming fragile. Others hear it and imagine a complicated map, something too technical for ordinary citizens and too legal to touch daily life. But federal democracy is not the weakening of a nation. It is the discipline of a nation. It is the system a diverse society builds when it refuses two forms of violence: domination from the center and fragmentation without common rules. Federal democracy admits the truth of human diversity and refuses to treat diversity as a threat. This is where our question begins. How can different peoples, regions, languages, religions, histories, and communities share one political home without being owned by one center or abandoned to permanent division? In a highly diverse country, centralized government can become a machine of imbalance. The center absorbs authority, resources, recognition, and opportunity. The periphery becomes silent, dependent, resentful, or angry. Decisions are made far away. Local knowledge is ignored. Public money flows upward. Services remain weak. Identity becomes politically dangerous. Federal democracy is the decision to stop that cycle through constitutional design. It is not merely a slogan.
It is not simply a map.
It is not a promise that every disagreement will disappear. It is architecture. A daily life guarantee that power will be distributed, rights will be protected, resources will be shared, and disputes will be resolved through institutions rather than force. The system reveal is shared sovereignty and federal allocation. Shared sovereignty distributes power between national and regional governments to prevent domination and fragmentation. In plain language, the hidden mechanism is shared sovereignty and federal allocation. Sovereignty is the lawful power to decide. In dictatorship, sovereignty is stolen by a ruler, party, or armed institution. In a fragile democracy, sovereignty may be contested, unclear, or unevenly enforced. In a functioning federal democracy, sovereignty is constitutionally shared. Shared sovereignty does not mean everyone controls everything. It means different levels of government possess protected authority over defined responsibilities. National institutions govern matters requiring common action, regional institutions govern territorial self-government, and local institutions govern services closest to daily life. This is unity with dignity. Cooperation without erasure. Belonging without ownership by one center. Federal democracy is a non-domination system. It protects regions and communities from excessive central control. It also protects individuals and smaller minorities from domination within regions. A good federal system prevents two dangers. The first danger is centralized domination. One center controls law, money, administration, security, education, language, and public recognition. Regional governments may exist, but only as administrators of central command. The second danger is fragmentation without accountable institutions. Power is dispersed through armed control, private networks, competing authorities, or local elites without common rights, lawful coordination, or peaceful dispute resolution. Federal democracy is the third path. Shared sovereignty under enforceable constitutional rules. The Constitution must allocate power clearly. If every responsibility belongs to the center, federalism becomes decoration. If responsibilities overlap without rules, conflict and paralysis grow. If powers are distributed without money or staff, autonomy becomes an empty promise. National powers often include defense, foreign affairs, currency, and countrywide coordination. Regional powers may include education, health, land, culture, and infrastructure, while local powers may cover water, roads, sanitation, markets, and community services. The exact design must reflect history, geography, capacity, diversity, rights, and the need for cooperation. Some powers may be exclusive. Others may be shared. Shared powers require rules about who sets standards, who administers services, who pays, and what happens when laws conflict. Federalism lives or dies by fiscal design. Whoever controls money controls real power. A regional government cannot fulfill constitutional duties if it depends on unpredictable permission from the center. A local government cannot maintain roads, schools, or sanitation without stable revenue, transparent transfers, and administrative capacity. Fiscal federalism asks who may raise taxes, who receives resource revenue, how poorer regions are supported, which level funds shared programs, how transfers are calculated, and who audits the money. Equalization is often necessary because regions do not begin with equal wealth, infrastructure, or tax capacity. Without fair transfers, federalism can preserve territorial inequality. But transfers must be transparent, predictable, and based on public rules rather than political loyalty. Natural resource governance must address ownership, consent, revenue sharing, environmental protection, local benefit, public reporting, and remedy, so nearby communities do not carry the harm while the center receives the wealth. Federal democracy also requires national representation. One chamber may represent citizens by population, while another represents states or regions as constituent units. But a chamber without meaningful authority becomes symbolism rather than shared rule. Common rights must apply across the federation. Federalism is not a license for a region to violate fundamental rights. One rights standard must protect every person, wherever they live. This includes minority within minority protection. A regional majority that once suffered central domination can still dominate smaller groups inside its territory. Federalism is moral only when it protects the weak at every level. Equal citizenship, language rights, participation, cultural protection, due process, and access to courts must not disappear at regional borders. Federal democracy also requires a referee. That referee is an independent judiciary. Courts interpret the Constitution, resolve disputes between governments, protect common rights, review unlawful action, and clarify the boundaries of shared authority. Without credible courts, disputes over power and resources can become political warfare. With credible courts, disagreement can become peaceful legal resolution. No strong courts, then fragile federalism. Strong courts, then shared sovereignty has a peaceful defense. Intergovernmental cooperation is equally necessary because not every problem belongs in court. Councils, fiscal commissions, technical bodies, shared information, and negotiated procedures can coordinate health, transport, rivers, energy, migration, disasters, education, and the environment without returning every decision to the center. The hidden structure becomes traceable through the governance chain. Constitutional rule, institution, policy, budget and capacity, official action, human experience, review, and correction. Constitutional rule asks which level of government has authority and what rights limit it. Institution identifies the body responsible for acting. Policy defines the chosen objective and standard. Budget and capacity test whether money, staff, data, and systems exist. Official action shows what government actually did. Human experience shows what citizens received or endured. Review and correction ask who can resolve failure and enforce change. A broken outcome may begin far upstream. The visible harm may be an unfunded school, a delayed road, a disputed land decision, an unequal service, or a conflict between national and regional authorities. But the deeper failure may be an unclear constitutional rule, a weak institution, an unfair transfer formula, a hidden agreement, captured oversight, or a dispute mechanism that exists only on paper. The chain prevents us from reducing a federal failure to one leader or one region. It identifies where law, allocation, finance, capacity, participation, review, or enforcement stopped working. When citizens can locate that break, criticism becomes more accurate and reform becomes more practical. For this episode, the principal mechanism is shared sovereignty and federal allocation. The production graphic must make every link readable on a phone screen and label country-specific or proposed arrangements honestly. Under dictatorship, federal design is shaped by concentrated command. Information is restricted, institutions answer upward, regional authority depends on permission, resources remain centrally controlled, and federal language may conceal centralized military or political power. In a fragile democracy, formal federal rules may exist while patronage, corruption, unequal capacity, politicized transfers, weak institutions, ineffective courts, or poor minority protection make autonomy inconsistent. In a functioning federal democracy, authority is constitutionally distributed, common rights remain enforceable, and national, regional, and local governments possess lawful responsibilities. Courts, legislatures, auditors, intergovernmental bodies, civil society, media, and citizens can test performance. Elections or federal language do not prove performance. The viewer should compare who decides, how authority was obtained, whether records are public, whether affected people participate, and whether constitutional dispute resolution and cooperation are available in practice. The constructive question is not merely what values we declare, but what institutions make federal democracy reliable. The minimum guardrails are 1. Clear allocation of powers. The Constitution must identify exclusive, shared, and local responsibilities, conflict rules, and the limits of each level of government.
2.
Adequate and transparent fiscal arrangements. Revenue powers, transfers, equalization, borrowing, resource income, budgeting, reporting, and audit must be governed by public rules.
3.
Democratic institutions at every level. National, regional, and local authorities need legitimate elections, accountable executives, capable administrations, open legislatures, and public participation.
4.
Minority and minority within minority protection. Common rights, anti-discrimination rules, language access, representation, local voice, and independent remedies must protect people against domination at every level. 5. Constitutional dispute resolution and intergovernmental cooperation. Independent courts, fiscal bodies, councils, negotiated procedures, and enforceable decisions must convert conflict into lawful resolution. These safeguards work as a system. Powers without finance are empty. Finance without accountability can fund capture. Elections without minority protection can reproduce domination. Rights without courts can remain promises. Cooperation without enforceable rules can collapse under pressure. Global relevance. Across political labels, ask who decides, what limits power, who pays, who benefits, what is public, who participates, and whether peaceful correction is real. Myanmar relevance. Apply the lesson without treating one organization, authority, community, armed actor, or proposed arrangement as the whole country. Separate existing institutions from interim structures, local practices, political commitments, and aspirational federal designs. State honestly whether an arrangement currently operates only in certain areas, or remains proposed. Here is the civic practice for this episode. See and ask. Ask what would change in your daily life if decisions were made closer to you. Consider education, health, land, roads, language, policing, taxation, and public services. Verify. Examine constitutional allocation of powers, fiscal rules, intergovernmental processes, minority safeguards, and dispute mechanisms. Distinguish an existing institution from a proposed or aspirational design. ACT. Allocate one public function across national, regional, and local levels. Add legal authority, funding, service standards, minority protection, public records, oversight, and dispute resolution. Use lawful methods and protect victims, witnesses, confidential records, families, and sensitive information. Review. Record whether you can name the responsible institution, the evidence, the safeguard or remedy, and one safe next step. The measure of success is not visibility. It is whether you can identify authority, finance, responsibility, protection, and the safest practical action. A citizen who understands the map of power cannot be easily trapped by slogans. That citizen can ask which government is responsible, what money it controls, what rights limit it, and where correction can be sought. Federal democracy is not a slogan to shout. It is an architecture to live inside. It is how a diverse nation stops being a battleground of domination and becomes a home of shared belonging. It is the decision that different identities can cooperate without erasing one another. When shared sovereignty becomes daily life, power is no longer a single fist. It becomes a structure of accountable hands. The principle to carry forward is this. Shared sovereignty distributes power between national and regional governments to prevent domination and fragmentation. Ask yourself, what part of shared sovereignty in federal democracy have I treated as normal, even though it should be visible, answerable, and correctable? Power must be restrained, distributed, and answerable. In the next episode, we continue with my local government. Services close to the people. Continue the playlist, use the worksheet, and keep the practice safe, truthful, and disciplined. The system shapes our lives. Our participation shapes the system. Subscribe, learn, participate, shape the future. KJA, knowledge justifies authority.